Usually, I don't clap to get everybody to quiet down. I shush. And it works really well, but every now and then there's somebody in the audience who's like, did you just shush me? And they do that thing with their head. I can't do it. Gordon, we're so glad that you're here. It's great to interview you. We like to interview business leaders who are responsible for building culture, building a strengths-based organization, and not just us consultants who tell you what to do, but sometimes we're just like, I hope. So, Gordon, can maybe you just start off by just telling everybody beyond the title, what do you actually do at Nestle? What's your job there? What do you get paid to do?
It's a good question. I hope there's not too many people listening out there that work with me. So yeah, my job is to lead the UK and Ireland organisation. We're an organisation that's made up of two business units. One is medical nutrition, so we're a big supplier to the NHS in the UK. And we also have a consumer care division, which is effectively vitamins, minerals and herbal supplements. My job is to bring what's been a lot of acquisitions together under one business, create one team, and then drive empowering healthier lives through nutrition across the UK and Ireland.
Sounds like a good mission. I like it. Thank you. So you've been there for maybe 3.5 years now.
Yeah, 4 years this December.
That's great. Before that, you've been with other organizations where you've used strengths as well as a leader, KKR, Red Bull. Can you maybe tell everybody about the first time you discovered your strengths and learned what they were and what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, so
maybe tell them what your strengths are. I've got them here just in case you're
no, it's high pressure environment.
Yeah, I know, right? Futuristic, positivity, strategic, individualization, and maximizer. I believe it's up there just in case.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
So the first time I had to actually dust off the original report, which was back in 2011. And I don't know if anybody else is like me. 2011 still feels quite close until you realise we're sort of in 2026 business planning cycles now. A bit of a shock really when I first reminded myself. And it was a real surprise. I read the report. I'd done a number of the other reports, whether it's letters or colours, and it always provided some insight, but this one really did go the extra mile. And I suppose at that point in my career, I was still developing a sense of self, who I really was, how much I showed of myself at work. And it really went that extra mile in terms of, oh God, this is me. I've got nowhere to hide. And this was being shared, with my colleagues. So there's a bit of shock in the beginning. And then as I started to embrace it, which I guess was probably the positivity coming through, really starting to see this, actually, I could see this working. I could see the impact it was having on other people and how we could use it together within the organisation, and we saw fantastic results. That was at Red Bull, actually, when I was there. And then I've used it in every organisation I've been in ever since.
In your current job, you think a lot about health, you think about well-being. For you personally, how do you use your strengths to maintain a sense of purpose, to maintain energy? Which strengths are helping you do that the most, and how do you make the connection between those for you?
I think it's critical. Well-being is a bit of a buzzword at the moment, and it's great. I work in that category. It's fantastic, but it's always been there in the background. And strengths is a great way of having that conversation. Driving high engagement. People who show up at work, who enjoy what they're doing, have a sense of purpose, have a sense of mission, but really understand themselves and can work together well. Really works. And for me, it was all about understanding what drove my engagement. I've been in jobs where I've not been highly engaged, and I know what that's like. And I've been in roles where I'm super highly engaged. And understanding my strengths and the people around me's strengths really helps me understand, well, what is it that makes me highly engaged versus when I'm not? And so that Sunday night feeling sometimes you have where you're not really looking forward to work on the Monday. Well, why is that? What is it around your work that's meaning that you don't feel as engaged? And really understanding your profile to help you do that. And ultimately, high level of awareness drives high level of engagement. And I feel that personally, and then I want other people to have that experience as well.
Mm-hmm. Zooming out from kind of yourself and thinking about the teams you've led, you mentioned you saw it working at Red Bull. What worked? Tell everyone, what did you see work that made you want to take it from one organization to the next?
I think there was a high level of leadership engagement in the program, which I still think to this day is, the success or failure of this program is whether the leaders are engaged or not. And I think there was a question, there's some comments earlier on in the session today about that. It absolutely has to be part of the leadership initiative. This is not a people partner or a HR initiative on its own. It just won't work unless the leaders are talking about their profiles, whether that's in a fun way or a serious way, a combination of both. It's absolutely critical to the success of it.
As you think about the people on your team right now and you think about their strengths, how helpful has it been knowing what their strengths are at Nestle and you being able to help them go down the direction, follow the vision that you're after or that you guys have created together? What are some maybe examples where you've been able to kind of help your team with their strengths? It's okay if you don't remember individual strengths. And I know like we get up, we're back there, he's like, oh, they have this top 5. We get up here like, what are strengths? But that's all right. But just love to hear like how it's helped you with your team.
I think it's still that aha moment, and that's quite relevant for the Brits here. Alan Partridge is back on the BBC. There really is that moment when you're seeing, you're observing behaviour, and you think you've got a bit of an intuition. So with my individualisation, I think I've kind of got something figured out. I'm starting to understand somebody. You read the report and you go, I've got it. I know what it is. And you can then tailor how you work with that person and how you can develop further understanding to really get the most out of that individual. And I think that's one of the things I get a kick out of the most is when you see somebody who might be in a difficult spot or trying to work out the next steps of their career, they might be at a crossroads, and you can help them identify new projects, new work, or even a career transformation perhaps, that allows them to go and be more of who they are in that next part of their career. That's super rewarding if you get the opportunity to do that.
It was mentioned that you're a certified strengths coach. Do you think every manager has to become a certified strengths coach in order to be able to focus on their team's strengths? And how do you think it has helped you?
I hope not, because it took me a long time to get to the qualification. So no, I don't think so. I think if you've got some passionate people who really...
I agree with you, by the way. That's the answer I was hoping for.
If you really get a hold of the philosophy and they understand it, and they can take it beyond the labels, really start to apply it, and get that into more people in the population of the organisation, it really helps. So I don't think they do. I don't think it has to be just managers. We run it through champions, so some of them are line managers, some of them aren't. It's people who've immediately gone, I like this, and have shown interest. They're welcome to join the scheme that we have, and we try to just empower them with all the tools, all the materials, and some guidance, but really to go and work with their team, whatever level that team is at, to help them take the next step.
How did you get it started at Nestle? When you first got there and you were there on the team, were they already using it a little bit, or did you have to kind of start things up? What did you do when you got there and
So it exists within the Nestle group organisation. We're made up of many different businesses as an entity. It exists in different markets, different geographies already. It didn't exist in the UK and Ireland within the group, and it didn't exist in Nestle Health Science. We were going through a massive change management program, and I see the opportunity to introduce something to help enable that change, and that's why we took on strengths. And really, it was that first step, announcing it to the business, making sure people really understood what it was and why we were doing it, and that really attaches to our well-being activity. So around high engagement, a higher level of well-being, and then we invited the volunteers to join us, and they helped to co-write the program and develop it with me. It wasn't a top-down. We talked about this before. It's not about I know what's best for the organisation. There's a lot of listening, a lot of understanding what was needed, and they told us how we would then do that with the organisation. And we're just over a year in now, about 14 months in, and we're starting to see some great results from it.
He's referencing when we were in the breakout, we're talking about our failures, and he's letting you all know about my failure, which I really appreciate that, which was,
That wasn't my intention.
I was like, mine was, I really learned that when you have the answer, it doesn't mean you should just tell it to them. Maybe they don't want to know. Maybe they don't need you to tell them. But I also think about this approach you've taken at Nestle, where you started with your leaders, you got them involved, you let them help shape what it looked like, and now everyone's using it there. How have you seen it change your team, change your organization, change the conversations?
I think immediately you start to hear it in conversations, people referencing their profile, their themes, talking about positives and negatives to do with whether it's their blind spots. I think that's the first sign. I think sometimes you also hear one of the things that I'm not a big fan of is when people say, oh yeah, but we've done strengths. So they've got their profile, they know their top 5, and it's just like any of the other programs they've done before. Okay, I'm a little bit more self-aware than I was this morning. And that's really where I start to pick up, okay, we've got to a point where we need to go further. And that's normally when you have to go beyond the label, because people have adopted it, they've understood it, but they've just really started that journey. And, nearly 15 years in now, I'm still learning about myself, and therefore I expect that they're still learning about themselves through their profile. Even reading it after a difficult morning sometimes, if you've had a bad morning and read your profile, you can uncover things that you didn't know the day before, just because you've been in maybe a higher stress environment than usual.
It's almost like how your previous day went is the lens with which you read that report, and therefore every day can almost give you a new insight. I love this going beyond the label. Can you just tell a little bit more about what you mean by that? And do you use that phrase with your team, or are you just using that for me?
No, I think that came through some of the materials at some point in that period of time. I don't think I've created it. It's really about understanding what it is. So let's say, for example, you're an ENTJ. Oh, so are you. So are you. So are you. Oh, right. We're not really that unique then. Or you're a yellow. We're all a yellow. Really? I don't think I'm as yellow as you. Or it doesn't really go that deep. But then you can have that pitfall with philosophy as well, within strengths. I've got a top 5. Yeah, they're slightly different maybe in their interpretation, but they're the same top 5 as somebody else. You've got to go much further than that. You've got to really understand each individual profile. You've got to understand how that person behaves when they're under pressure, or when they're in a place of joy. When things are going really well, how does that manifest itself? So we try and spend more time in understanding what's the difference between two people who have positivity, and how does that manifest in their day? What is it that makes them positive?
That's a great example of seeing two people have the same strength, and yet it might mean something different to them. We were doing something where we had our 2 reports right next to each other, 2 people with positivity. And of course, as many of you know, in our insights report, it's a different definition, right? They're like, wait, I thought we both had positivity. Well, your positivity with your deliberative and my positivity with my activator are quite different, right? So I think that's great. The labeling thing is so important, because a lot of what strengths is supposed to be about is about individualizing rather than categorizing. And I was kind of paid to believe what you were saying when you were saying something about other assessments, but so I realized my bias. But at the same time, I thought it was important. You were calling out, like, other assessments often are trying to categorize you into big buckets, and this is trying to individualize who you are. You've got that talent of individualization. How have you seen that help you build great teams, where you've been able to see how individuals fit together and how they would be the right person for that team at that time?
I think it's really about the right diversity. What is the problem you're trying to solve at that point in time? What are the challenges you face in the future? So really, that futuristic helps me. What are we going to face into, perhaps, that we don't already have a grasp of in a lot of detail? Who are the people who can not only help solve the problems right now, but can adapt and have the agility to deliver against those things in the future? We face into some huge changes in the workplace at the moment with AI, with the political and economic landscape that we're in. We really have to support people with different tools and the right tools to help them and enable them in these environments. So I think individualization helps us understand, okay, what's that person experiencing right now? How can I help them to be the best they can be, despite all of those forces around them?
Is there any specific time where you can think of with your team, where maybe an example that you can share where strengths was helpful?
I think there's numerous examples where it's been helpful. We've got some live examples where we're working with Gallup at the moment within the team. We're trying to establish new ways of working. We're a heavily regulated environment, yet we're trying to be agile. We're trying to work really quickly and respond to patient needs within that environment. And we're also trying to help the NHS and the government save money. So one of the great purposes for us is how we reach those patients and help our government at the moment, which is struggling. But we don't always get that right within our business, so we need some help to navigate that. And so strengths can really help people take a step back, understand why perhaps people are rubbing each other the wrong way, or perhaps there's points of conflict. It's not necessarily about the work, it's about how we're getting the work done.
Yeah.
And strengths can really help to unlock that. And I understand now that Alan Partridge aha moment again, and really understanding what it is that makes that person tick and why they react perhaps in the way that they do.
You're going to have to go back and watch some Alan Partridge reruns.
That's 2 references. I'll stop now.
That's all right. I'm okay with it. So speaking about kind of some of the things you just mentioned, this is really about driving your business strategy forward. And you mentioned engagement, you mentioned all those things and well-being, and that's part of it. but it's also about driving business outcomes. How do you connect the dots for your team when you talk about strengths and performance?
It's that classic equation, input versus output. Yeah, I believe if we get the right inputs, the outputs will look after themselves. If I spend my time analysing the spreadsheets that show me we've got market share decline or we're not performing in line with the KPIs, that's not going to help me. I've really got to look at what are the key enablers to drive growth, and a big part of that is engagement. And so I see strengths as an absolute enabler to high performance if you implement it in the right way.
I enjoyed our conversation when we were talking during one of the breakouts on how do you measure the effectiveness of your efforts with strengths. And we talked about, maybe you can put a couple of survey items on your engagement survey, or maybe you can do a big business impact analysis. And then we talked about, well, what are some behaviors you can look at? What are the behaviors that matter most to you with your team when it comes to how they perform, not just what they produce?
I think the things that we always look for are really bound in quite basic principles. It's about attitude, really, how people show up, performance and capability multiplied by attitude. So we really look for that within our business. How are people responding to those challenges that we're facing? How are they using their strengths to help enable their growth, their personal growth, to overcome those challenges? So I think that's one of the things we really look for is people who are open-minded and people who embrace those challenges that come along. We can't control all of those things, so let's control the things that we can.
Okay, so I'm a total nerd, but I just heard an equation in there, and at Gallup, we love those equations. That was, what was it again? You had something.
Performance and capability.
Performance, capability, multiplied times attitude. Oh, man. Wish I had a whiteboard right now. We could write that down. I love that. That's so good. I also love that you want to keep learning. You said you don't love it when you hear people say, "Oh, we've done strengths," because we're never done. What do you think is next for your team as you think about all the things you're doing? You're working with Gallup on some things, but what do you think they need to? What's the mindset you're trying to get them to grasp right now?
I think we're going into the next phase where it'll be really down to their co-creation and their autonomy now, which phase this now goes into. So we've got a team that enabled, they're delivering great work across the business. The next time we check in will be to understand, okay, what does the next route map look like and how did they build that? So I've helped them so far, but now it's really about what's the next step we can take. So do we need some people to become certified coaches to help them take that next step? Because I can't do that alone, and we can't certainly spread the same level of content at the same quality if there's only a few of us driving that. So there's some things that we need to figure out how we do that, how we invest in that as well is obviously important, and try and drive the next wave, the next cohort of champions, perhaps a layer down or maybe bring some more of those skeptics in and see if we can really build a movement behind it.
And just plugging them into the equation you've built now, like, certified strength coaches, capability, the next generation of evangelists. Oh, that's attitude. I love it. That's so good. If you had advice for any of the leaders here or any of those who are coaching leaders on trying to build a strengths-based organization, obviously you've said you need to get the leadership team on board. What other advice would you give them on how to build a strengths-driven organization that creates high performance?
I'm not a great one for probably giving advice.
More about what he's about to say.
Yeah, I certainly don't get everything right every time. I think patience is required. I think it takes a long time. If you're going to be absolutely honest about, do you have a strengths-based culture in your organization? My response would be, no, I don't. I think we're working towards that. But actually, if I look back on my career, one of the reasons I've stayed in the roles I have for as long as I have has been because of the purpose, because of the mission, but because the job wasn't done in terms of building the team. And sometimes you can't control all of those forces because people will change. They'll leave the team, they'll move on to different challenges. So you're always constantly trying to strive to a place that maybe you'll never get to. And that can be difficult, but it certainly takes longer than I think you would expect. And I think it's Tony Robbins who quotes, we overestimate what we can do in a year and we underestimate what we can do in 10. I think it's similar. If you want to get this into your culture in terms of one-to-one conversations, objective setting, PDPs and evaluations, that takes time because you guarantee there'll be some managers who are skipping it or they're paying lip service to it. So how do you bring everybody in to really understand the power of it will take time. will take time, and you'll have to prove the concept to them.
Gosh, that's good advice, especially for someone like me with Achiever. I'm probably the person who says we've done strengths. Dang it. But I think that this is great. Like, you can look at your top 5 and see how those helped you answer that question and think that through. Your maximizer is like, but there's still more. There's more we can do. You look at your positivity and you're like, but that's okay. We don't have to say we're a strengths-based organization for us to be going down the right direction and things be great. That was good. You're teaching me. It's all right, Achiever. You don't have to check everything off. So that I love that. I guess the last question I have for you is, what makes you so passionate about strengths that we could convince you to come here and talk to a big group of people about it, and that keeps you bringing it from every organization to the next one, to the next one? Why do you love it so much?
I think it's in my profile. It's probably the maximizer in me and the positivity. I love something that seeks the positive side. That's what I'm looking for. I don't want to just look at the problem. I want to look at what the solution is. And I've seen a track record of results because of strengths as one of those enablers to help drive high performance and output. So it's always in my toolkit as something to look at whenever it's leading a new organization or going through change management, what's required, and often it will be there. And so I think it's that constant pursuit of something, continuous improvement, going from good to great, all of those great things. But I think that's what strengths can bring in abundance. So it's always probably going to be there for me in that sense, that I'll use it as an option. And I don't think there'll be an occasion where it's not fit for purpose, because so far I've experienced very different experiences, very different challenges, and it's always helped to enable the change and drive performance. So, in that sense, I'm a commercial leader. I've got to deliver results, and it's always helped me deliver the results. So, particularly in terms of engagement, but also in terms of output in high performance terms.
Okay, well, I guess the mic is telling us that really was the last question.
Ben was being a bit brutal there. Just cut us off.
That was like, he said last question, not last 3 paragraphs. Jeez. No, it's great. We're so glad that you came here. Thank you so much. I know everybody's always interested. He's here for the rest of the day, so ask him questions. Find out what they've done. Dig deeper with him. Well, let him have breaks too. If he looks overwhelmed, just let him have a break. But Gordon, you are one of the leaders that we admire, and we appreciate what you do, because you're actually leading these things and you're making it happen. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.